think some of the clarity is in my way of being in the world. So just kind of, again, the distractions and the tasks and the go, and the I can do everything and I'm Superwoman, and, just the realization that that's not the case, right? And when you get older, that becomes a little more obvious.
You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 52. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Is your business running your life? Are you fed up with working crazy long hours only to lay awake at night worrying about cash flow or feeling totally angry and frustrated over what your team isn't getting done? If so, listen up. I've got something I want to share with you. At Tap the Potential, we have our small group coaching program that is designed for business owners just like yourself who are done. You're done with the way things are going and you're ready for a change, and not just any little Band-Aid change. You want a life-changing business transformation. That's what we specialize in at Tap the Potential. We turn life and cash-sucking small businesses into highly profitable, great places to work. And then we send those business owners on a 4-week vacation while the business runs without them. If that sounds good to you, I invite you to check out our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential, where we integrate Profit First, the Pumpkin Plan, and my book, How to Hire the Best, into our small groups to produce these transformations. All the while, we're working with you to be the leader you need to be to create this business that can run on its own while you have more life. Check us out, tapthepotential.com. A 4-week vacation can spark things, and some surprises come when we schedule 4-week vacations and actually take them. Today's guest has had some interesting insights and surprising discoveries that have evolved from just the fact of deciding to take a 4-week vacation, as well as going on that 4-week vacation and having that experience. We have Dr. Jennie Byrne joining us on the podcast, and not only is she going to share with us her insights from a 4-week vacation, she's also going to share having gone through the Pumpkin Plan process and interviewing her top patients in her psychiatric practice and what she has discovered and how that has impacted her strategic decision making. So with that, let me share with you her formal bio. Dr. Jennie Byrne, MD, Ph.D., is a board-certified adult psychiatrist who focuses on high-quality, convenient, and innovative care for patients in the 21st century. She's the founder and owner of an outpatient psychiatric group, Cognitive Psychiatry of Chapel Hill. Her business focuses on seamless delivery of high-quality, convenient mental health and substance use care with outstanding customer service. Dr. Jennie, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. So you're a psychiatrist and
Yes.
You are in Chapel Hill and you've been in business quite a while. How many years have you been in business?
It will be 9 years in a couple days.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yep.
So one of the things that I think that you've done that is pretty remarkable recently is you've taken a 4-week vacation.
Yes. And that was about 2 months ago.
So talk to me about what spurred that for you. Let's go back because we've been working together now, I think about 9 months.
Uh-huh.
What spurred your interest in taking a 4-week vacation?
So even before we started working together, I think I saw the value of me not being in my business all the time, me not trying to do everything and, building good systems for people. So in the past, I had kind of worked up to a space where I could take, I'd say a week out of the business without any contact. And I felt like that was a really big accomplishment for me to get to the point where I felt like I couldn't take 24 hours away to the point where I could do a whole week. So I was very proud of that. And I felt really good about that. And then when we started working together and you started talking about the 4-week vacation, I think a light bulb went off for me. Like, okay, a week is good. And that's something to celebrate, but that doesn't really mean that everything can go without me. Because when I come back from that week, I noticed that there's a pile of questions and things that got put off just until I got back. So even though that week was wonderful, it still wasn't quite independent. So the idea of the 4-week vacation as a way to really test the business and see where the gaps were was appealing. And it was also kind of a shocking idea for me that I could do that. Like, I had never had anyone even suggest that that was possible.
So it was kind of so far out of the realm of reality that it got your attention and got you curious, like, hey, could I do this? And what would it be like if I did? And, something you said I think is so important. I remember for myself when I would take a week off or even 2 weeks off, and the prep work that I had to do to take that week or 2 weeks off was daunting. And it would keep me from wanting to take the time off. And then I would find myself at the end of that week, like the last 2 days of my vacation, dreading going back because I knew what was waiting for me. And it was going to be a crazy week and appointments stacked on top of each other and emails to return. And even as I talk about it, my stomach starts to and, from that perspective, what business owner would want to take a vacation? Right? Like, it's
right.
Totally different purpose. Yeah. So as you started working towards the 4-week vacation, what did you find yourself putting in place?
Some of the most obvious things were around the monthly billing cycle, like with the bank and paying the bills. Like, that was my number one thing I noticed, that no one else had ever done that. There was no vehicle for that. Even making deposits to the bank, like, they would just kind of wait a week. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me. So I actually had to figure out who could do that. And that is a very high trust role. So I actually decided to ask somebody else to do that who wasn't currently in the business, because I just felt like I actually asked a family member to do it because I felt I could, trust them if no one else. And so that was a big aha for me, that I had to really trust somebody to do that and document, the procedure, which is fairly straightforward.
But isn't that interesting, though? Because if something were to happen to us, like we had an unexpected illness and we needed to be out for a period of time, that's a key part of our business.
Right.
To keep the doors open and the cash flow going. That's huge to have a contingency plan in place for that. And so when you came back from your vacation, did you take that responsibility back yourself?
No, I was planning to take it back, but some of the ahas I had on the 4-week vacation was that it was such a not difficult task, but psychologically burdensome task to look at my bank every day. Like, that threw me into a very reactive state, looking at the bank, there's a lot of money in the bank, or, there's nothing in the bank, or it really threw me into always being reactive. And so when I came back, I decided to just see if I could keep it off my plate. And my family member was willing to do it, at least for now, just to keep rolling with that. And then I really noticed that psychologically that took a ton of mental energy off of me that I wasn't even aware of. And it took the reactivity, the day-to-day reactivity. I still have ups and downs, but it's not like every day there's an up or a down. It might be more, it's a little more gentle now.
That's huge. And that's so true. There are things that we take on in the business as the business owner. We think nobody else can do it. We never question if anybody else could do it. So the 4-week vacation got you questioning, who else could do this? Who else do I have in my world that I trust that will do this consistently? And then the discovery that just paying the bills and making deposits was a huge toll on you because that kept you looking at the bank balance and you were reacting psychologically to the bank balance. I think we're going to have more shrinking on this episode than anybody.
We have 2 shrinks in the room today.
Talking business. But the psychological burden was going on in the background. And that's been removed from you. That's phenomenal. Okay. So what else had to be addressed as you started getting ready for the 4-week vacation?
So the other big aha for me was with my patients, because I do still see patients regularly. And this for other businesses would be clients, right? So I was regularly engaging with my patients the way that other businesses are regularly engaging with their clients. So the other big idea for me was, are my patients okay without me for 4 weeks? What is going to happen to them? I've never taken 4 weeks out. In New York City where I trained, a lot of shrinks will take a month out in the summer to be away from seeing their patients because they believe it's actually really important for their own mental well-being. And so I had this idea that my patients wouldn't be okay without me for 4 weeks. As I'm sure a lot of business owners feel like their top clients or their, tricky clients or difficult clients aren't going to be okay without them. So that was a big thing. How do I talk to my patients, saying I'm going to be out for 4 weeks, and how are they going to react? Are they going to get angry or resentful? Or are they going to smile and nod, but secretly get upset? Are they going to melt down? Are they going to act out? And I can talk about these in shrinky terms, but these all happen in regular businesses too, right? This is not just patient specific, right? It's just, we call them patients instead of clients, but it's the same dynamics.
Right. And so I think for us as business owners, what runs through our head are gremlins, all of our fears about how will other people react to what I am doing? Is it going to upset them? And if it's going to upset them, maybe I shouldn't do it. That's the gremlin talk.
Or I look selfish, or I look like I'm just going to go get on a yacht and cruise around for 4 weeks while everybody else is working hard. Or those are some of the thoughts I had.
Yeah. And so what actually happened?
I had such interesting reactions. I work with a lot of patients who have their own businesses, and they were kind of in that shock too. Like I told them, this is why I'm doing it. And they were, wow, I never thought about that. So the business people had that reaction. And then some of the other, patients they were just very concerned that everything was okay with me, which I thought was really
They wanted to take care of you.
Yeah. They wanted to make sure that I was okay. Some other people, I told them that this was a time I would work on some professional development. And they were really curious about that and some of the other things I do outside of the business. So I had a variety of responses. I saw a couple people get anxious, and we talked about who would be there to take care of them while I wasn't there. And we kind of, I think, got through it. But most of the patients were really kind of excited for me, especially the ones that know me for, 7-8 years, and I've never done this before. And so when I came back, a lot of the patients, were really bright and cheery and like, how did it go? I want to know, was it hard for you? What did you do? So they were actually really supportive of me. I didn't expect that at all.
Wow. Okay. So just for our profit designers, I want to share, there's a couple of ways to manage this issue because it goes on in a lot of businesses, especially, if you're a psychologist, psychiatrist, you have individual clients, coaches have individual clients sometimes. So how do you navigate a 4-week vacation when you're typically meeting with people on a fairly regular basis? So what did you just said we won't meet for 4 weeks? That was the option you chose, right?
Yeah, I started about a month or 2 out. So I started talking to people about a month before I actually went out.
Okay. So that's one option, is just set the expectation. And that's, for me, I have a very small number of individual clients that I work with. And I just set the expectation that I will take 6 weeks in the summer and 4 weeks at Christmas, and we'll work your, contract around that. There's another way of handling it is to have multiple team members involved in the service delivery so that there's somebody who can step in. Like you have other doctors who were available. If there was an emergency, I'm sure that they had people they could contact and see in your absence.
And in some cases, I planned for them to see somebody. So if I had a patient I see regularly, I might actually, or someone actually had one or two that I was a little bit concerned about because they had some active symptoms going on. And I wanted to make sure that they didn't just, get left out for a month. So I actually set up an appointment with them with someone else. I said, I'd really like you to see my colleague just to check in. I'm going to tell them your situation. They're there. I'd really like it if you just did a quick phone call with them or checked in just so that I feel good that you're taken care of. And that worked out. And so I had maybe 5 people that I actually scheduled times with in my absence.
Mm-hmm. And I've also found that our clients appreciate the team approach because they're getting to talk to someone about a similar issue, but they're getting a little different perspective on it. Or maybe the other strategist that they're talking to on our team has some wisdom and experience in that realm that I don't have, that they're able to bring to the table. So I've really enjoyed kind of opening up that relationship and giving our clients more resources. So I just want, for our profit designers who are listening, I just want you to know there's multiple ways to navigate a situation like this. And the important thing is to pick the option that works for you and your circumstance and your clients, patients, customers, whatever.
And I think if you're thinking about pulling back from some roles in general, that's a great opportunity for them to meet one of your team members and develop a little bit of a relationship so that down the road, maybe they become the primary contact for that client or patient instead of you. So you kind of let them test the waters without committing to that relationship.
Absolutely. And speaking of testing the waters, the 4-week vacation also allowed some of your team members to step into different roles than they'd been in previously and test the waters. Do you want to share anything that you discovered in that process?
Sure. I had one doctor who's been working with me for, 6 years now. So he knows the system really well. And I asked him if he would be interested in taking over a little bit of the clinical oversight role that I would typically do. Kind of, he's the backup. If something happens, a clinical issue, and the office manager doesn't know what to do, we get stuff like record release or, things like that. So he stepped into that role while I was gone to see what it was like. And then when I came back, we talked about it, and I think it's actually going to be something that we let him do going forward.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity for him to step up and try it out. And actually not just for him to try it out, but for us to actually define that role a little bit better. Like, well, what is that? What do you really need? What does it really do? And we kind of got some definition around it.
Well, and that's interesting too, because that's one of those tasks that you've just been doing. Like, as the business owner, you just absorb it and do it without much thought to it. But then when you're delegating it to someone else, it does force us to define, well, what is this role that I've been doing all along? And for me, I know whenever I've had to do that, I also discover it takes more time than I give credit to. Like, I just say, oh, it takes me 5 minutes, but it actually takes way more than 5 minutes. It's a bigger responsibility. What else came about for you from this 4-week vacation?
I mean, the big word, that came to me was clarity. This was probably the first opportunity, I'm trying to think ever, I'm sure there were other times, but it feels like the last time I could remember was probably after college. I had about 3 weeks between finishing classes and starting a job. I feel like that was probably my other longest stretch. So I had real clarity about not just the business, but I think everything, the big picture. What do I want? What are the real goals here? Where is the business going? Where am I in my personal life? What do I really want? What are all the distractions that are pulling me away from that? What is it about me that makes me want to jump in and just start new things? And that can be distracting, and kind of a big clarity overall.
Those are some powerful questions that you started asking yourself on this 4-week vacation.
Yeah.
I also know that you have talked about it being uncomfortable to have this clarity and the new awareness. Can you share a little bit about that?
Super uncomfortable. So I am a very active, restless person, which can be good and bad. And what this has forced me to do is not just fill up time with tasks and distractions. So without all the tasks and the distractions, that lets me really see what's going on, and to sit with that and not just move on to the next thing and fill. And I noticed the first couple weeks of the 4-week vacation were still a lot of tasks. It was like, okay, here's the list of things at my house I've never done. Let's go through them and check them all off. Okay, here's all the books I wanted to look at. And so the first couple of weeks actually were still a lot of task checking, but then it settled down. And so at the very end of the 4-week vacation, then kind of coming back from it and kind of where I'm at now, there aren't so many tasks and distractions, and it feels very uncomfortable. And I think some emotions came up. Again, I'm being very shrinky here. Some emotions came up that I hadn't ever dealt with, maybe. Some thoughts came up that I was able to see in a new light, but it wasn't always good. A lot of it felt kind of bad, and I didn't rush to go do something else to alleviate that. And that was a big thing for me.
That takes a lot of self-control to not rush in and do something else to distract. I know this is something I hear a lot from our 4-week vacationers, and I went through it myself when I took my 4-week vacation. I also had a lot of tasks the first couple of weeks, and I found myself as the tasks cleared out, I saw myself wasting time. I saw myself getting drawn into social media in a way I've never been in social media before. And it was depressing and uncomfortable. And then I stopped myself and I said, this is not how I want to spend my time. I think that this is a little microcosm, a little glimpse into what people go through when they retire.
Yeah.
That uncomfortable feeling of what am I going to do with myself? I strongly encourage our listeners who are doing the 4-week vacation or who are in the situation where you have that opportunity to step back, persist and be in that discomfort. Don't distract yourself and try to pull away from it. There is good on the other side. I took a 6-week vacation 4 or 5 months later. I went through my own gremlins around that, kind of like what you just said. Well, my clients think I'm self-indulgent for, I did a 4-week and now I'm doing a 6-week. And I found I really had to do it because there were things that I had to fix from the 4-week vacation in order to do the 6-week vacation. But I also needed to do it for myself so that I could just go into that 6 weeks knowing what it was going to be like initially and be able to be more present in it and not go down the slippery slope of I don't know what to do with myself. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to fill my time in some unproductive way. Social media, it's also the same as just sitting out in front of the TV and zoning out for hours on end and sitting on the couch and just eating potato chips and whatever. So what other clarity has come for you from this 4-week vacation?
I think some of the clarity is in my way of being in the world. So just kind of, again, the distractions and the tasks and the go, and the I can do everything and I'm superwoman and, just the realization that that's not the case, right? And when you get older, that becomes a little more obvious. So I'm getting a little bit older. And so I'm noticing that I'm not 100% all the time, and that's just what it is. And so I think just getting a better understanding of myself and where I can add value without being that person that was 100% go all the time. That's not my value. I have value beyond just my ability to complete 1,000 tasks in a day or to juggle 20 things at once, or that's helpful, but that's not my value.
Well, and I think we also take on this role of business owner, and it can easily define who we are. And as we step out of that in the 4-week vacation, we have to ask, who are we if we're not this entrepreneur business owner? Who are we besides this? What else is there here? And I know your 4-week vacation, one of your moments of clarity that you've talked about is that you have an awareness of you want to shift your role in the business.
Yep. And that was a big aha too. It not just, I'm taking a 4-week vacation and then when I come back, I'm going to be back in it just the same as I always have been, but that I may actually have more value to the business not to be in it. And that I may be actually detracting from its success by being in it. So what I'm working towards now is really a role. It's not, owner role. It's not owner, just to me sounds like you're just, pulling money out of the bank or something. It's not that simple, but, kind of pulling back into a role where the day-to-day operations run without me, but not just that, but monthly operations go without me too. And so to be in that role, we're at the point where we're really having to focus on the idea of the key performance indicators. How are we going to, what reports do we need to know that we're on the right track? What's going to be the process if things aren't on the right track? Or how are we going to identify when we did something really good without me being the one to scour through all the notes and the records and like try to just brainstorm on my own the solution, letting me step back and help them guide that. So we need this layer of reports and KPIs, and we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. And so we're kind of at that place where we've been working on what that interface between me as the owner and then the rest of the team looks like.
So I'm connecting some dots as you're talking. And we recently had Mike Michalowicz on the podcast, and he talked about his next book, which is Fix This Next, and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that he is applying to business ownership. And his discovery in the research that he's been doing that as human beings, when we follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and for those of you who are not shrinky like Dr. Jennie and I, Maslow laid out a hierarchy of needs, and it's a pyramid, and at the base of the pyramid are most basic needs: shelter, food, water, those, and then a little higher up is safety. And so essentially we can be functioning at a higher level where we're focused on building relationships and esteem and, doing good in the world. But as soon as we get hungry, we're pulled right back down to the base level need of the hierarchy. And that's where our focus goes. So Mike's premise in his next book is that when it comes to our businesses have a hierarchy of needs as well. And if we haven't done the things at the base, we can't advance to the next level. The challenge, though, that Mike is pointing out is that we are not in tune to our business's needs intuitively like we are physiologically to our own needs. And a lot of times we focus on the wrong things in our businesses. We decide this is the problem, we need to fix it. And we start over here fixing it. You can't, so we're on video, or Dr. Jennie and I are on video. Our listeners can't see it, but I'm like pounding away like a little hammer over here. We're over here fixing it. And then we see something else and we're like, oh, that needs fixing too. So I'm going to go over here and pound over here and fix this. We could be working on the completely wrong things. And you saying me being in the business could actually be hindering the business. What clicked for me, we as business owners, when we are in the business, a lot of times our perspective is skewed and distorted around what really needs focus. And when we start shifting and running the business out of the business and putting key performance indicators in place, now we have more clarity around what actually needs fixing in the business. Because any one of us in our businesses have 1,000 things that could be worked on at any given day to be improved, right? And so these key performance indicators start to focus our attention on, out of all this universe of things I could be fixing in my business, what are the ones that are going to have the greatest impact now?
Right. So in other words, okay, I don't like this photo on the website, but maybe that's not really the top priority.
Right.
And getting a nice camera and taking a nice picture. That would be nice, but that's really not what we need to focus on.
Yeah. So as you've started putting key performance indicators in place, what are some of the things that have come to light for you where you want to put more attention and your team putting more attention?
I think the biggest one the last couple of weeks as we're working, right now we've been working on weekly and monthly. So what the biggest aha for us was that we only had retrospective reporting. We didn't have anything prospective. So we were looking at what happened last week, last month. And that was like, okay, well, that wasn't great, but there was nothing forward looking. So it wasn't like we had a forward looking action plan guiding us. So right now we're just in the place where we've designed a report that's also a look ahead. So today, actually, Friday, we're going to have a report that looks ahead for the next week and says, this is what next week looks like. What do we need to do for next week? And then what are going to be the steps to try to get us there? And we get to the end of the week and we're going to reflect back on what we did and what worked and didn't, but we're also going to look forward. So that was like a big, it was like one of those after you figure it out, you're like, why didn't I think of that before? But that was kind of a big aha, that we need to look forward and have action steps looking forward instead of looking backward.
Yes. And that retrospective reporting is pretty typical of what business owners deal with. I mean, we look at profit and loss at the end of the month, whenever the accounts get reconciled around the 10th or so. And that's something that happened 40 days ago by that point. And how do we change that? And we can, as myself, as a business coach, when I'm coaching, I get really frustrated when we're looking at someone's profit and loss from the previous month and they're saying, well, we didn't hit the revenue level that we need in order to be profitable. And then I'm saying, okay, so what are we going to do going forward to address that? And that if it's something that happened 40 days ago, it's so easy to say, well, that was an anomaly.
Exactly.
We had a couple team members who were out. And so, and it leads us into this diluted, another shrinky term, diluted thinking around, maybe I really don't need to do anything. Maybe it's just going to self-correct.
Right.
But now when we're looking at predictive reporting and actually planning, and it's in real time, it's like you're talking about what are we going to do this coming week to make things hit our targets. And then you're doing the reflecting afterwards around how did this go. So there's a lot more communication going on the team. And things are starting to sync up around those key performance indicators. And you're also identifying what's out of line with our major key performance indicators. What do we need to pull back in?
So we're just starting it, so I'll have to let you know how it goes. But I think I already feel like there's, again, that clarity and focus because we've picked just a couple things to look at for the week ahead. So even just identifying those and setting up the schedule that we're going to look at them, I'm already feeling more focused on it. So I feel like that was a big aha in the KPIs. And then the monthly KPIs, I think the mistake, but the place we had been doing before was we had like 20 things we were looking at. And again, it was always like, well, it's June and June is this, and and this person was out sick, and so it was always like all this rationale for these 20 numbers. And so it never really did much except to look back and say, oh, well, that could have been better. So I think we've narrowed it down to 3 big KPIs for the month with maybe like 1 or 2 other smaller ones. And then I think the next step is to try to add in the layer of the annual cycle, because we definitely have ups and downs that are seasonal. And so to have a metric that's looking at that and variability. So that's our next step for the monthly. But again, that's more of a retrospective, and the weekly one is going to be our real prospective one for now.
Okay, good. Another area of the business that you've put attention on is how are you unique in the world of psychiatric practices? How do you stand out? And you're in Chapel Hill, so there's competition, right? There's lots of psychiatrists in Chapel Hill.
Luckily, yes. Most places in the country have none. So we have a couple, so better than nothing.
A couple. So not a lot, but a couple.
Right.
What are you doing? And this comes from the Pumpkin Plan and looking at an area of innovation. You did the wish list interviews with patients. And so for those profit designers who may not be familiar, the Pumpkin Plan is a book that we use a lot at Tap the Potential with our clients. It's really the core of what we do in helping to identify the business sweet spot. And that involves looking at top patients. And top patients aren't special people necessarily, like there's something wonderful about them. It's that they are actively utilizing the services of the business. So there's people vote with their dollars. So they are the ones voting the most with their dollars for the business, that there's value coming to them from the business. And there is good alignment with their core, the client's core values and the business's immutable laws are core values. So it's easy to do business. There's a good feeling. And the cringe factor is if you've ever had a phone call from somebody who is a very difficult customer, you notice yourself kind of cringe up and you think, oh, do I really have to take this call? That's the cringe factor. So top clients, top patients don't have that cringe factor involved. And so when we're looking at the sweet spot of the business, we want to understand from the top patient's perspective, how they view the business. And that's what is uncovered in those wish list interviews. So what are some of the things that stand out to you that you discovered as you looked at your wish list interviews?
I think the idea of what are our core values, right? What are the main things that make people a good fit? And this was actually really hard for us because when you say cringe, that for a psychiatric patient, that can mean a lot of different things, right? Like you might cringe because you're worried about someone, or there might be reasons to cringe that are not a fit problem, right? So for us, that was a little tricky. So we really had to identify what were the values where people were not a good fit. And a lot of it came down to accountability. So we're a really good fit for people who are very engaged in their care, who are accountable, and they do what they say they're going to do. We do very well with patients who are very respectful of time. And it turns out that like this idea of time is probably like a secondary indicator of other things like respect. But the idea that people who are on time do really well with us, that was a really interesting finding because we focus on being on time for our appointments. Like we're always on time. That's one of our big differentiators. But the patients who are on time are also a good fit for us because that shows that they value our time and we value their time.
Yeah. So let's get a little shrinky here, Dr. Jennie. That's a key thing that comes out in immutable laws and core values. So when there's one factor like patients who respect time, you said it points to other things that they also do that are connected to that are underneath that set them up to be successful with you guys. What are some of those other things that you're discovering that are connected to the respect of time?
I think people who value time as opposed to, let's say, cost. So some people might value cost and always want to have the lowest cost option. Whereas the people who are good fits for us are going to be, they value time perhaps more than cost. So those people tend to be people who are busy, but I hate to use that word busy because everybody uses that word. But these are people that have responsibilities typically. So they are either responsible at work, they are responsible as a caregiver, they are responsible in their relationships. So time is really valuable for them and they really respect time because they know that their time is precious and that they have to use it for other things. So it points to people who are either taking care of other people or taking care of their own business or professionals or things like that, or students. We have a lot of students who are, really invested in their education. And so time is actually, you'd think a student, well, they can come in anytime they want and they're super flexible. No, students are pretty busy. A serious student is pretty engaged in their work. And so time is really important to them. So I think it's like the idea of mutual respect, that they do things in their lives where they are accountable and doing things for other people, that they, again, it's not all about the cost. It's kind of the time and the relationships are important to them. Those are some of the secondary things that we're seeing. And just respect is also a word that's used a lot, but there's a real, when a patient shows up on time for you every single time, that's a respect.
Right. And they're much more likely to get better faster because they're effectively utilizing your service. So in some ways, you're stacking the deck for their success by clarifying who is most likely to be successful with you in the ways that you all run your practice. You're now being more intent on attracting those folks to the practice. And then once they're in, they have a better chance of succeeding with you and getting good results. And then we get good results with our clients. And when we get good results with our clients, word gets out, it feeds that word of mouth. And it's just kind of that snowball effect that gets rolling.
And I would add one more thing that it's been enlightening is that the patients who are not a good fit for us, by identifying what is not a good fit, it has forced us to go out into the community and identify other places that are good fits for them. So that when somebody wants to, they call us, they're a new patient, and they say, we'd really like to come there. And we're like, we just don't feel like this is a good fit. We don't just say, click, hang up the phone. We say, I think this place would be a better fit for you. Here's their phone number. Why don't you give them a call?
Yeah.
it forces us to go into the community and have a better sense of what's out there and connect with them. And sometimes those relationships are really good too, because then they have someone call them who's a bad fit for them and they know us. And so that it's strengthened the relationships in the community as well.
Yeah. And in a psychiatric practice, any medical practice in a community, those relationships are really important with other providers because that does cross-referring is big. I also want to draw a connection to a previous podcast where we had Wayne Mullins and Dr. Jennie. When we're recording this, Wayne's episode hasn't dropped. So you haven't heard this.
Okay, I was like, I don't think I heard that one.
That one isn't that familiar. It's going to drop next week, but you and I are recording a little bit ahead here. So when we had Wayne and we interviewed him, he was talking about how he finds his A players. Wayne is here local to me in Alexandria, Louisiana. It's a smaller area. And he has a phenomenal team of A players. And so I asked him, how is he finding them? And he said that they have zeroed in on a characteristic of their A players that's helping them to find others like them. And he said, what we have noticed is that people who succeed and do really well on our team have been in leadership roles somewhere in their life. And, whether that's in a school activity where they've been a leader or if they're in a leadership role out in the community currently, and that is their characteristic. And I think what's interesting about that, and to tie it to what you just described about respective time being connected to other characteristics, is this leadership role in the community also is connected to other characteristics of being an A player as a team member that sets someone up to be successful in a business. Because if somebody has had a leadership role in a school club or out there in the community, they've had to deal with lots of people. They've had to manage different people's feelings and reactions. They know how to work through problems. They've had to be able to take different perspectives and have responsibility. So there's a lot of alignment here in terms of understanding who are your ideal clients and the characteristics that set them up to be successful, and using that same kind of way of thinking, because I'm imagining you don't want to hire anybody on your team who doesn't respect time. They're not going to fit well either, right?
And we've had some physicians that have left because of that. They were excellent doctors. They were excellent, super caring, high quality clinicians. They had good, insights. They were pleasant. We liked them, but they couldn't be on time. And we had to part ways just because of that, because really that didn't fit the culture.
Yeah. So as you did those wish list interviews, what else came out of that for you?
I think one thing that I had intuitively thought but not had evidence for was that the environment mattered to people a lot. So the way that the space that we're in feels to them when they come in, the way that the room, is decorated, the way that they have, coffee, the way people greet them, the vibe of when they walk in, the windows, we have windows. That was a big thing. A lot of offices don't have nice windows to look outside. People really remarked upon that as something that was important to them. And so I had kind of intuitively felt that, but I didn't have evidence for it until I did those interviews.
That is such a big deal. Those are things that we take for granted. And so as you're stepping out of the business and being in it as much, this is something you're going to want to be intentional about maintaining and making sure there's a process for maintaining that. I think about our retreats that we do here. You're signed up for the 2020 retreat. One of the pieces of feedback that we consistently get is people appreciate the environment, that we're not in a hotel conference room.
Right.
Without that feedback, I could have easily said, we have so much demand for this retreat, we should scale it bigger and I should get a hotel conference room downtown. And that would totally diminish the experience for everyone. So just that understanding from our clients of what is working that we want to be sure to keep doing and maybe be even more intentional around, I think is very important. Because as businesses grow and scale, and you see this a lot, that, I think about like Whole Foods, like being bought by Amazon. I hear a lot of people talking about the Whole Foods experience is totally different than it was 3 or 4 years ago. As a business scales, it's very easy to get away from the basics of what people have really appreciated about that business.
Right. And there's a great example of a decision I just had to make based on that feedback was, our lease was ending. And when I talk to other medical businesses and they're always like, why are you, that building is so expensive. You should go somewhere cheaper. There's no reason you should pay that much for rent. And so I'd always intuitively felt like it was really important to be in that space because it had a certain feel that other places didn't have. And I kept getting pressure all the time, years and years, everyone just telling me like, you shouldn't be there. It's too expensive. And so I made a decision to move forward in the same building. We're going to shift the space around actually. But that was an example of a big business decision that feedback was really important. Because if I hadn't done that interview, I probably would have been tempted to go somewhere much less expensive, which would feel totally different.
Yeah. And it changes the whole vibe. Any other discoveries that stand out to you from the wish list interview?
I think the other feedback we got, which again, intuitively I thought there, but I got evidence for, was that the fact that the non-physician people in the office, so the administrative staff, the way that they talk to people, the way that they greet them, the way they spend time with them on the phone, makes people feel like they're taken care of. So this idea that the doctors take care of you in one way, the business takes care of you in another way, we got that feedback a lot. Like I feel cared for. I feel like everybody there is trying to help me. The team approach and feeling like I can trust them and they're all there to help me and take care of me. That was really good feedback to get to.
Yeah, it's very powerful. So as we wrap up here, I would love to get maybe some words of wisdom from you now that you're 9 months into this journey with us. And we have people listening on the Profit by Design podcast who maybe they're on the fence. Like, should I move forward? Should I get some help working on my business? Do I really want to embark on this? What are some words of wisdom that you can share from being in it 9 months now?
I would say that it's very easy to keep going around and around in the same circle, and I could have done that for 10 more years. So it takes courage to ask for help. It takes courage to look at what's not really going as well as you want it to look at, but it's worth it on the other end. I think the 4-week vacation was hugely clarifying. So even if you don't do anything else, consider doing something like that just to see what happens as an experiment. I think it's been what surprised me about working with the coaches. I think the emotional and psychological journey has been much more intense than I thought it would be, but I feel like I'm going to come out in a really good place that I wouldn't have otherwise, and mature, and really looking forward at the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be different than it would have been otherwise. So my words of wisdom were, if you're feeling brave, go for it. But it is a journey. It's been a lot. I've been surprised by the amount of internal change that has happened.
And, I want to speak to that because that is kind of scary and intimidating to go into something knowing, oh my gosh, Dr. Jennie just said there's going to be a lot of emotional turmoil, and she's a psychiatrist saying, and so
I'm not sure I understand.
Siri just talked to me.
Siri had something to say about that. We might leave that in. That was pretty perfect. Whenever we go through a change process, there is emotional upheaval and it is uncomfortable. And we all come out better on the other side of it. And you fully embraced the process. I remember when you started working with us, you were showing up to everything, like anything that we were doing free out there, you were showing up, any paid things, like you were like, I'm going to do this. I am totally all in. And you have accepted support from, we have other clients that are in there working in small group. There's a lot of support going on. We have several team members on the Tap the Potential side who work with our clients. So there's a lot of support through the process. You're not going through it on your own. And I think a lot of other coaching programs, that support is not there. And that change process is even more uncomfortable. And it makes it easy to give up. And that's the main thing is we don't want people to give up. We want to get you all the way through to the other side, to the good vibes. And in bringing you on the podcast, you're in the midst of it. And I so appreciate your willingness to talk openly and be real about, hey, this is what it's like in the midst. It's not all rah-rah and, perfect and everything. There are some difficult things. There's some good things happening and there's some challenging things.
And I think that I don't want to make it all sound like doom and gloom. I think that the support I'm getting through the group as well is better than having a therapist sit with me on the couch and go through all of this. I mean, that is really different than other things I've done in the past, which always were kind of like a fix-it, like the little hammer approach. This is different because I feel like I'm supported as a whole person. I'm not just like tinkering around the edges of things. Like we're really looking at it full force, and I'm totally supported. And so I feel like whatever I choose, whatever happens, like I've had that support from this group and had those relationships. And that is just invaluable. Honestly, I don't think I've felt that from other things I've tried in the past. So I don't want to make it sound all like super intense, but for me personally, it just is right now. But I think, again, highlighting the fact that there's that support anytime I've needed anything, that you all or the others in my other business owners have just jumped in there to support me. And that's something that you can't, that's invaluable.
It is. And those other business owners are sharing from their experiences. And so you have people that have been through what you're going through, some of them will be going through what you're going through. And the sharing is around experience. It's not, hey, go do this and it'll all be better. Here's the 3 steps. It's all going to be better. And that level of support around experience sharing is very, very different, I think.
And very real.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very real. It's not just, fluff.
No, we go deep. And I think our podcast listeners know that from these episodes. It gets deep. So Dr. Jennie, I so appreciate having you here and it takes courage to come on a podcast and share your experience.
Thank you.
So I acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. I'm so honored you asked me. And I also just, for anybody who's listening, I try to be really real about things. That's my nature. This is the real deal. This is not fluff. This is not a little hammer. So yeah. I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jennie.
Thank you.
Are you ready to be the leader you need to be to have the business that gives you your life back? If so, you may be a good fit for our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential. You can apply directly by going to profitgift.com. All one word, profitgift.com. What are you waiting for? Your life is waiting for you. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up. Keep moving forward. You got this.